The helicopter blades cut through the thick Afghan air as Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell pressed her face against the small window. Below, the rugged mountains stretched endlessly, their peaks shrouded in morning mist. She adjusted her civilian clothes nervously, the fabric feeling strange after years of military uniforms. Her cover story was simple. She was a freelance journalist documenting humanitarian efforts in remote villages. Nobody could know her real identity. Sarah had spent 8 years as a Navy SEAL, one of only a handful of women to complete the grueling training program. Her specialty was intelligence gathering and medical support, skills that made her invaluable for covert operations. This mission was different from anything she had done before. Intelligence suggested that a high-value target was hiding in a small village near the Pakistani border, but the area was too sensitive for a full military operation. Sarah's job was to infiltrate the village, gather intelligence, and report back without raising suspicion. The helicopter pilot's voice crackled through her headset. 5 minutes to drop zone, ma'am. Weather's getting rough down there. Sarah nodded, checking her equipment one last time. Hidden beneath her loose-fitting clothes were various communication devices and medical supplies. Her camera and notebook would serve as props for her journalist cover. Most importantly, a small GPS tracker was sewn into the lining of her jacket, allowing her team to monitor her location at all times. As the helicopter descended toward a clearing several miles from the target village, Sarah's mind raced through her mission parameters. She had studied the village layout for weeks, memorizing every building, every path, every potential escape route. The villagers were known to be suspicious of outsiders, but recent Taliban activity in the area had made them more welcoming to anyone who might bring international attention to their plight. The helicopter touched down briefly, just long enough for Sarah to jump out with her small backpack. Within seconds, the aircraft was airborne again, disappearing into the cloudy sky. She was alone now, miles from any friendly forces, with only her training and instincts to protect her. Sarah began the long walk toward the village, her boots crunching on the rocky terrain. The mountain air was thin and cold, making each breath feel insufficient. She had trained for this environment, but the reality was always harsher than any simulation. As she walked, she practiced her cover story in her mind, refining the details that would make her seem like just another Western journalist seeking a compelling human interest story. The village of Khyber Gar appeared gradually as she crested a small ridge. Mud brick houses clustered around a central courtyard where children played despite the morning chill. Smoke rose from cooking fires, and she could hear the distant sound of goats bleating. It looked peaceful, almost idyllic, but Sarah knew that appearances could be deceiving in this part of the world. As she approached the village entrance, several men emerged from the houses. They wore traditional Afghan clothing and carried themselves with the careful alertness of people who had lived through decades of conflict. Sarah raised her hand in greeting, calling out in Pashto that she came in peace and hoped to speak with the village elder. An older man with a gray beard stepped forward. His eyes were sharp and calculating as they studied Sarah's appearance. She had deliberately chosen clothes that were modest but clearly foreign, the type a Western journalist might wear while trying to respect local customs. After a brief conversation, the elder invited her to share tea and discuss her purpose in visiting their remote village. Sarah spent the next several hours carefully building rapport with the villagers. She asked questions about their daily lives, their struggles with drought and security concerns, and their hopes for the future. Her genuine interest and respectful manner gradually won over their initial suspicions. As a trained SEAL, she had learned to read people quickly, and she could sense their guard beginning to lower. By evening, she had been invited to stay in the home of Rashida, a widow who had lost her husband in a Taliban attack 2 years earlier. Rashida lived with her 3 young children in a small house at the edge of the village. Sarah appreciated the strategic location, which would give her a good view of the surrounding area while maintaining her cover as a sympathetic journalist documenting the struggles of Afghan women. As night fell, Sarah lay on a thin mattress in Rashida's spare room, listening to the sounds of the village settling into sleep. Through her small window, she could see the stars blazing overhead with an intensity impossible in any Western city. Her communication device, disguised as a satellite phone for filing news stories, would allow her to check in with her handler tomorrow evening. For now, she needed rest and time to plan her reconnaissance activities. The next morning brought new challenges. Word of the foreign journalist had spread throughout the village, and people began approaching her with their own stories. An elderly woman wanted to talk about her son who had disappeared during a night raid. A young father described the difficulties of finding clean water for his family. Each conversation was genuine human connection, but it also complicated Sarah's mission timeline. More concerning were the subtle signs that not everyone in the village was happy about her presence. She noticed certain men watching her from a distance, their expressions unreadable. During her SEAL training, she had learned to trust her instincts about potential threats. And something about these observers made her uneasy. On her second evening in the village, Sarah finally spotted what she had come to find. A man she didn't recognize from her previous observations appeared briefly in the courtyard of a house on the village's far side. Even from a distance, something about his bearing and the deference shown to him by others suggested this might be her target. Sarah carefully noted the house's location and began planning how to gather more detailed intelligence without compromising her cover. That night, she managed a brief communication with her handler using coded language that would sound like a routine check-in with her editor. She reported her progress and requested an additional 48 hours to confirm the target's identity and gather actionable intelligence. The response was terse but approving: maintain cover and continue mission. The third day brought unexpected complications. Taliban fighters appeared on the village outskirts just after dawn, demanding food and shelter. Sarah watched from Rashida's window as heavily armed men spread throughout the village. Her heart raced as she realized her carefully planned mission had suddenly become exponentially more dangerous. Rashida appeared at her door, speaking in urgent whispers. The fighters were asking about the foreign woman, and the village elder was trying to convince them that she was merely a harmless journalist. Sarah quickly gathered her most essential equipment, concealing it beneath loose clothing while preparing several backup stories to explain her presence if directly questioned. The situation deteriorated rapidly when gunfire erupted from the direction she had spotted her suspected target. Through her window, Sarah could see Taliban fighters running toward the sound, shouting orders in Arabic and Pashto. Villagers scrambled for cover, pulling children into their homes and barricading doors. Sarah faced an impossible choice. Her mission was to remain undetected and gather intelligence, but her medical training and natural instincts pulled her toward the sound of human suffering. As the gunfire continued and she heard cries for help, she realized that maintaining her cover might be less important than saving lives. Grabbing her hidden medical supplies, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. She ran toward the chaos, no longer thinking like an undercover intelligence operative, but responding like the trained combat medic she truly was. As she rounded the corner toward the source of the gunfire, she had no idea that within minutes, everything about her carefully constructed mission would be blown apart. The scene that greeted Sarah was chaos beyond anything she had prepared for. Bodies lay scattered across the narrow street, where an improvised explosive device had detonated during a firefight between Taliban fighters and what appeared to be American Special Forces. The smell of cordite and blood filled the air, mixing with dust kicked up by the explosion. Wounded men from both sides groaned in pain, while others continued exchanging sporadic gunfire from behind overturned vehicles and crumbling walls. Sarah's medical training took over completely. Years of battlefield experience kicked in as she assessed the scene with clinical efficiency. 3 Taliban fighters were down and appeared beyond help. 2 figures in American tactical gear lay motionless near a destroyed Humvee. Most critically, she could see a 3rd American soldier trapped beneath debris, his leg bent at an unnatural angle while blood pooled beneath his body. Without hesitation, Sarah sprinted toward the trapped soldier, her civilian clothes billowing as she moved in a crouch to avoid stray bullets. The remaining Taliban fighters seemed more focused on escaping than continuing the fight, but the situation remained dangerously unstable. As she reached the wounded American, she could hear his labored breathing and see the pale complexion that indicated severe blood loss. The soldier's eyes focused on her with confusion and pain. Through gritted teeth, he managed to speak. Who are you? You need to get out of here, ma'am. It's not safe." Sarah was already examining his wounds, her hands moving with practiced precision. The debris had crushed his left leg, causing what appeared to be a compound fracture with significant arterial bleeding. Without immediate intervention, he would bleed out within minutes. She pulled medical supplies from beneath her clothes, her actions swift and sure. "Stay calm," she told him firmly, while applying a tourniquet above the wound. "I'm going to get you stabilized." The soldier's eyes widened as he watched her work. Her technique was flawless, exactly what he would expect from a military combat medic. But she was supposed to be a civilian journalist. According to the intelligence briefing his team had received about foreign nationals in the area. Something didn't add up, but the pain was making it difficult for him to think clearly. "You're not," he started to say, but Sarah cut him off. "Don't talk. Focus on staying conscious." She was already moving to address his secondary injuries, a deep laceration on his shoulder and possible internal bleeding from impact trauma. The sound of approaching helicopters filled the air, and Sarah realized that extraction was imminent. The other members of the SEAL team would be arriving shortly, and her cover would be completely blown. But at this moment, saving this soldier's life was more important than maintaining her mission security. As she worked, more American special forces appeared from defensive positions around the village. She could sense them watching her with growing suspicion and amazement. Her medical skills were too advanced, her movements too professional for any civilian. The way she handled combat trauma, the specific techniques she employed, even her positioning to maintain tactical awareness while treating the wounded. Everything screamed military training. "Ma'am, we need you to step back," called one of the approaching soldiers. His voice carried authority and confusion in equal measure. "Medical support is inbound." Sarah looked up from her patient, blood on her hands and determination in her eyes. "This man has severe arterial bleeding and possible internal injuries. He needs immediate surgical intervention that your field medics won't be equipped to provide. I can keep him alive until you get him to a proper medical facility. But I'm not stepping back." The soldier who had spoken stopped in his tracks. The confidence in her voice, the precise medical terminology, the way she had automatically taken charge of a life-threatening situation. None of it fit with her supposed identity as a freelance journalist. He glanced at his teammates, seeing the same confusion reflected in their faces. "What's your background, ma'am?" another soldier asked carefully. Sarah continued working while she spoke, her voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Right now, my background is keeping your teammate alive. We can discuss credentials later." The sound of rotary wings grew louder as a medical evacuation helicopter approached the village. Sarah could see the aircraft circling, looking for a safe landing zone, while the pilot assessed the security situation. Time was running out for multiple reasons. Her patient needed immediate evacuation, and her own situation was becoming impossible to maintain. "I need you to help me move him," Sarah commanded, looking directly at the nearest SEAL. "We have to get him to that helicopter, but the movement could cause additional bleeding. One of you needs to maintain pressure here while I monitor his vitals." The soldiers moved to assist without question, responding to the natural authority in her voice. As they carefully lifted their wounded teammate, Sarah continued to direct their movements with the expertise of someone who had managed battlefield evacuations before. Every instruction she gave revealed more about her true capabilities. During the careful movement to the helicopter landing zone, the wounded soldier remained conscious enough to study Sarah's face. Despite his pain and blood loss, his training allowed him to recognize what he was seeing. This woman moved like special forces, thought like a medic, and commanded respect like an officer. But according to his team's intelligence, she was supposed to be a civilian. "Who are you really?" he whispered as they approached the helicopter. Sarah met his eyes directly. "Someone who wasn't going to let you die." The medical helicopter touched down in a whirlwind of dust and noise. Professional military medics jumped out, rushing to take over treatment of the wounded soldier. Sarah began to step back, hoping to blend into the confusion and somehow salvage her cover story. But it was too late for that. As the medics took over, they immediately began asking about the initial treatment. Their questions revealed just how expertly the soldier had been stabilized, how precisely the bleeding had been controlled, and how professionally the whole situation had been managed. The level of care was consistent with advanced military medical training, not basic first aid that a civilian might know. "Ma'am?" One of the military medics addressed Sarah directly. "Your intervention saved this man's life. Where did you receive medical training?" Before Sarah could answer, the wounded soldier spoke up from his stretcher. His voice was weak but clear enough for his teammates to hear. "She's not a journalist. Look at her hands, her positioning, the way she handled the trauma. She's military. I'd bet my life she's special forces." A heavy silence fell over the group despite the helicopter noise. Every SEAL present turned to look at Sarah with new understanding. Her civilian clothes suddenly seemed like a costume. Her presence in this remote village took on new significance, and her reluctant heroism made perfect sense. The team leader stepped forward, his expression serious. "Ma'am, I think we need to have a conversation." Sarah realized that her mission had fundamentally changed. Her cover was blown, her target was probably long gone due to the firefight, and she was now face to face with American forces who would demand answers she wasn't authorized to give. The wounded soldier was being loaded onto the helicopter, but her own situation was just beginning to unfold. As the medical helicopter lifted off with its patient, Sarah found herself surrounded by a SEAL team that had too many questions and too much evidence to ignore. The village around them was returning to an uneasy quiet, but for Sarah, the most dangerous part of her mission was just beginning. The SEAL team leader approached Sarah with calculated steps, his weapon lowered but ready. His name was Chief Petty Officer Marcus Rodriguez, and 20 years of special operations experience had taught him to read people and situations with deadly accuracy. What he saw before him didn't match any of the scenarios he had prepared for during this mission briefing. "Ma'am, I'm Chief Rodriguez," he said formally. "We need to establish your identity and understand what you're doing in this area. The way you handled that medical situation suggests training that goes well beyond civilian capabilities." Sarah took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine not only her personal safety, but potentially the success of broader intelligence operations in the region. Her mind raced through protocols and contingencies, but none of them had prepared her for being discovered by friendly forces rather than enemy combatants. "My name is Sarah Mitchell," she said carefully. "I'm here on assignment, and I can't provide details without proper authorization channels." Rodriguez exchanged glances with his team members. The phrase, "proper authorization channels," was military speak that no genuine journalist would use. Combined with her medical skills and tactical awareness, it painted a clear picture of who they were dealing with. "Ma'am, with respect, we've got a situation here that requires immediate clarification," Rodriguez continued. You're in an active combat zone, you just displayed advanced combat medical training, and you're claiming to be a journalist while speaking like military personnel. My team needs to know if you're friend, foe, or something else entirely." Before Sarah could respond, her hidden communication device crackled to life. The coded transmission was brief but urgent. "Package compromised. Extract immediately. Acknowledge receipt." The sound was unmistakably military communication equipment. Rodriguez and his team immediately recognized the transmission protocols, even if they couldn't understand the specific codes being used. Sarah's cover story had just received its final death blow. "All right," Sarah said, realizing that further deception was impossible and potentially dangerous. "I need to make a secure communication to my handler. What I can tell you is that I'm United States military, conducting an authorized operation in this area. My mission has been compromised by recent events." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "What's your unit and authorization code?" Sarah hesitated. Revealing her SEAL credentials to another SEAL team would answer their immediate questions but could complicate broader operational security. However, the alternative might be detention by friendly forces, which would be even more problematic for ongoing intelligence gathering in the region. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, Naval Special Warfare Development Group," she said quietly. "My authorization comes directly from JSOC, and I need immediate secure communication with my handler to determine next steps." The effect on Rodriguez and his team was immediate. DevGru was the most elite unit within the SEAL community, and a female officer at that level represented someone with extraordinary capabilities and clearance. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly fit together perfectly. Her medical skills, tactical awareness, and presence in this sensitive area all made sense. "Ma'am," Rodriguez said with new respect in his voice, "we weren't briefed on any other friendly operations in this area. There might be a coordination breakdown somewhere up the chain of command." Sarah activated her communication device properly, no longer concerned about maintaining her civilian cover. Within minutes, she was in contact with her handler at the Joint Operations Center. The conversation was brief and conducted in codes that Rodriguez's team couldn't understand, but the professional manner and military protocols were unmistakable. After ending the communication, Sarah turned back to Rodriguez. "Chief, my mission here has been terminated due to the security situation. I've been ordered to extract with your team if possible, and we'll sort out the coordination issues once we're back at base." Rodriguez was already coordinating with his own command structure. The presence of another SEAL team member, especially one operating under JSOC authority, required immediate notification up the chain of command. Within an hour, helicopters were inbound to extract both teams from the compromised area. As they waited for extraction, Sarah found herself in the unusual position of explaining her mission parameters to fellow SEALs. The target she had been tracking was indeed the high-value individual that intelligence had suggested, but the Taliban presence and resulting firefight had made capture or elimination impossible during this operation. "The whole village is burned now," Rodriguez observed. "Whatever intel operation you had running here is finished, but that medical save you made on Peterson, that was worth more than any intelligence we might have gathered." Sarah learned that the wounded soldier she had treated was Petty Officer First Class David Peterson, a 10-year veteran of special operations who had been serving as the team's communications specialist. Rodriguez explained that Peterson's injuries would have been fatal without immediate and expert medical intervention. "He's got a wife and 2 kids back in Virginia Beach," Rodriguez continued. "What you did out there, dropping your cover to save his life, that means everything to this team." As the extraction helicopters approached, Sarah reflected on how completely her mission had changed from what she had planned. She had come to the village to gather intelligence on enemy operations, but ended up saving the life of a fellow SEAL and potentially preserving operational security for future missions by extracting cleanly with American forces. The helicopter ride back to base was filled with professional conversation between the 2 SEAL teams. Sarah found herself answering questions about advanced medical techniques and sharing insights about intelligence gathering in hostile environments. The natural camaraderie between special operations personnel transcended the unusual circumstances of their meeting. Back at the forward operating base, Sarah underwent extensive debriefing with intelligence officers who needed to understand exactly what had been compromised during her mission. The Taliban fighters who had escaped would certainly report the presence of American forces in the village, but her own cover as a journalist might still be salvageable for future operations if handled correctly. 3 days later, Sarah received word that Peterson had successfully undergone surgery at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. His leg had been saved, and while he faced a long recovery, he was expected to make a full return to active duty. The message included a personal note of gratitude from Peterson and his family. More importantly, for ongoing operations, intelligence analysis revealed that the firefight had actually provided valuable information about Taliban movement patterns and communication networks. The enemy fighters' response to the contact had revealed previously unknown organizational structures that could be exploited in future operations. 2 weeks after her extraction, Sarah received new orders for a different type of mission. Her combination of medical skills, intelligence gathering capabilities, and proven ability to operate under extreme pressure had attracted attention at the highest levels of Special Operations Command. She would be joining a task force focused on rescuing captured American personnel, where her unique skill set could save more lives. As she prepared for her new assignment, Sarah thought about the decision she had made in that Afghan village. Abandoning her cover to save Peterson's life had seemed like a mission failure at the time, but it had led to outcomes that no amount of intelligence gathering could have achieved. Sometimes the most important victories came not from following the plan, but from following the principles that made someone worthy of wearing the SEAL trident. The wounded soldier she had saved would return to his family because she had chosen humanity over mission parameters. For Sarah, that made every compromise worthwhile. In the world of special operations, where success was often measured in targets eliminated or intelligence gathered, sometimes the most meaningful achievements were simply the lives preserved along the way. Years later, when she looked back on her career, Sarah would remember that moment in the Afghan village not as the mission where her cover was blown, but as the day she learned that being a true warrior sometimes meant choosing to heal rather than to hide.